Hey guys, and welcome to a little demo video slash introduction slash tutorial on how to use Tiramisu. This is a sampler that I've been wanting to make for a long time, and in the last few months, I've really just started working on it with Sam Terracasian and Alex Van Gils, and I'm just glad that we finally have it out in the world, ready to show you guys and sort of demonstrate how fun it is to use, and I'm just psyched about it. So I just want to make a video to show you guys each button, what it does, how you can use this plugin, and then at the end, I just sort of want to run through 5 different uses that I've found for it so far, and things that I think are cool to try, especially with effects that you can rack after the plugin as well. So let's just dive right in. Let's start with just an overview of what the plugin looks like and what each panel is about. So here on the left, you know, the text can't be really even mistaken for what this section is. This is the sample drop area. You can just, from the Ableton search panel on the left, you can drag sounds directly in, drop them in. So we just selected 27 gunshots, and you can see they load into this area over here, and it tells us below how many we have loaded. Now we have on to the right of this is the sample selection area. This is the 6 samples that have been selected at random by the sampler to layer together. So that's the basic way that this sampler works. It's going to select 6 sounds at random from the sounds that you provide the plugin, and it's going to play them all back and layer them together. But before it layers them together, it's going to run them each individually through these 5 effects. It looks like 4 effects, but there's actually 2 in this top left panel over here. So it runs each sample individually through these effects, just to add variety and add randomness to the whole thing. So then obviously it runs through the master, which is, you know, there's a master pitch and then a master volume as well. So basically, this synth is a way of generating happy accidents with certain content. It's a way of getting variety out of little content. It's a way of sort of inspiring yourself to, you know, find sounds where you didn't really know they existed, or layer things together that you may not have thought before to layer together. And I just want to run through. So basically, the 5 examples that I'd like to talk about are gunshots, menu sounds, some cave drones, like some ambient atmosphere stuff, some drums, like some snare drums, and then finally like a battle ambience, so like some sort of hodgepodge of a bunch of different war sounds put together to show you what kind of work this thing can do with creating random soundscapes. So with gunshots, I wanted to use gunshots to explain the sort of functionality of the locking mechanism in the sampler. These, if you're familiar with Ableton, these 2 buttons should be simple enough. You can disable certain slots. So if you only wanted to randomize 3 samples, for example, you could do it this way. So that should be simple enough. Just the same way that in a track you can enable and disable a track. This is the way you can enable and disable a particular sample. And we can obviously also solo certain samples just to hear what one layer of a sound is doing. But this feature right here, I think, is especially useful, this lock feature, for making gunshots. And the reason that is because gunshots, often you want to guarantee a certain level of thump or a certain character at the base of every gunshot that you make, just to make sure it's punchy and that you're not wasting a bunch of randomizing on sounds that, for example, are only tails or only distant shots or layers. So the locking function is great for that. So I'm going to clear the sample bank, and then start by dragging in these 2 samples. So if I wanted to make a gunshot and layer in all these tails and cool mechanical elements and distant elements, but I wanted to guarantee that this sub hit and this close layer were always in the gun, then I could just go right to the sampler. I could drag in my close layer, and then I could drag in my sub. And now what we have here, you can see this is the sub and this is the close layer. And if I were to play the synth right now, I've turned off randomize, so nothing's happening. But also if I turned it back on, nothing would happen because these effects are all in their default positions. You can just see they swap back and forth from time to time because they're just randomizing which order they play in. But now I can lock these 2 sounds in. So now no matter what I add to the synth, or no matter what parameters I start tweaking, these will always play back the same way. So now I can go into my folder that I've sort of made ahead of time of a bunch of different distances and types of recordings of guns of a AK-47 single shot. And I can drag them into the sample bank, and you'll see that they start populating in every other slot. So now if I hit randomize, I get different tails, I get different layers on top, And the cool thing about that is that now I've actually added some racks after this. I added a little bass monoizer and a compressor. Now I can start adding variety to the actual samples themselves. So I can say with, for example, the start range that I'd like to cut anywhere between 0 and 52.3 milliseconds off of the beginning of each sample. So some samples may have nothing cut off, some may have 20 milliseconds cut off the beginning, and this might help me stagger my transients a little bit more and prevent muddiness in the transient. Now I could also add some delay. So I could say every sample plays back between 0 and 31 milliseconds. So some might play back at 0 milliseconds, some might play back at 31 milliseconds, but these two samples that I've locked in will always play back at the very beginning to guarantee my transient. Now the pitch, I could say everything is going to be somewhere between -4 and +4 semitones. I could take some minimum filter, or actually I would just say the maximum. So I could take off, for example, 10 kilohertz off the maximum just to give some filter variation to every sound. And then I could, for example, take the volume and crank down maybe 10 dB and just give some variety to the volume of each sample, although maybe if we wanted a longer tail or a heavier tail, we could just keep that as is. In fact, I think that's what I'll do now. And then because it's a gunshot, we're not really concerned with global pitch. But so yeah, let's play this back and see what we get with the compressor and with the monoizer. I love that. I think it's very cool. I think it's just cool getting variety with almost no work. It's fun because it would take maybe 30 seconds to drag those samples in and layer them together, and maybe it would take even longer than that if you wanted to start EQing stuff. But with this, it's just very easy. You can hear right away variations that you may like or may not like, and that's the whole point of this plugin, is that you just sort of find something that works for you. And then, of course, one of the great things about this being a sampler in Ableton is that I could go in and say, now here we go, here's one shot, and I could duplicate this, and once you duplicate this out, you can just freeze and flatten the track. So now, for example, it's going to generate all these random effects, and you can see here that we basically just decided on a version of our sound that we like, and we've randomized and printed just a bunch of variations of it. And these, of course, can just be exported right away, or you can just start tailoring them more specifically. You could take them out and just start editing them individually. But it's just a lot of fun. It's a great way to print variation that would take a lot of time otherwise. Okay, so I've taken out the gun sounds, I've loaded up a new instance of the sampler, and I wanted to show you guys what it would be like to make some menu sounds or some very strange beeping noises, like some computer sounds. So I've basically gone into my sample library and just selected a bunch of random computer beeps or synthesized tones, and I can throw them all in here. You can see we've got 70 samples loaded, and they show up here on the timeline. Now let's just go crazy with effects. We can say 24 is the maximum pitch. We can bring things down to -6 and 24. We can start range and delay range won't matter too much because a lot of these sounds are longer. So they're, for example, taking 1 second off the start or delaying them by 1 second might not make a huge difference. This is an effects module that might work a lot better for short transient sounds like drums. We'll get to drums later. Now we can add some filtering. We can say minimum 20, maximum 20. So we're getting a huge range of filters, and volume. We can change the volume a little bit. I've also added an OTT here on the end because why not? It's computer sounds. What are you gonna not use an OTT? So I've loaded these in. Let's see what we get here. Could be annoying, could be great. We don't know. It's kind of fun just clicking randomize and just hearing what comes out. I could see it being useful for a lot of things, but it's very fun to just load in your samples and then see what gets spit out. I mean, with these, it's all very similar because a lot of the samples that have been loaded in are very similar, like these beeps and flashing, shimmering lights kind of sounds. Yeah, these are really annoying, but I think it's fun just to throw them in and see what gets spit out. And of course, this could be something where all you have to find is one little texture that you like, and you print it, and it becomes it becomes a sample that you can now treat like a normal thing that was in your sample library all along, when really it's a randomized layered sort of amalgamation of 6 sounds that you didn't even really try layering together before. So now drones. This is interesting because I was going to make a bunch of cave drones and sounds like that to demonstrate what it would be like to build atmospheres with this plugin. And one of the things that I thought was really funny was that I ended up just using the same sounds that were in the GUI library, because when you work with source material like that has a lot of high-pitched content, or that maybe, for example, you're just going to filter all of it out anyway, it doesn't really matter what you put in the beginning. So I figured I would just make some drones for example, a cave, or little musical stingers for a cave, but use these sounds with the low-pass filter cranked all the way down. So here's a demonstration of what that turned out like. Changing the pitch here as I go, changing the filter and the pitch. Maybe add some OTT before it. And we're just getting interesting textures, just very weird drones. Distant alarm sounds. It's really kind of hilarious how little effort it takes to find some cool, unique textures that you've never heard before in your own sample library with this plugin. That's my favorite part about it, honestly. Okay, next I want to talk about snare drums. Snare drums are my favorite part of electronic music, are snare drums. And I just wanted to show you a little demonstration of how easy it is to throw a bunch of sounds in your library together and just generate cool drum sounds for either electronic music or to be layered together later, for example, in gunshots or in magic spell sounds, or anything that you use drums as sort of a sweetener layer, which I do all the time. So I put together a little folder of a bunch of different snare drums that are in my library. I'm going to drag them all in to Tiramisu, and this is where I like to use a lot of delay range. So for example, if every one of these snares played at the same time on top of each other, you can hear the transients are really sharp. And I like adding delay range because now each sample is going to randomly play between 0 and 42 milliseconds. So we can guarantee that not everything is going to play. Well, we can't guarantee it, but it's very low chance that everything's going to play on top of each other. We'll get some breathing room between the samples. Change the attack on the compressor. And just like that, for example, if we found a cool, oh, we have no pitch on. Let's change some pitch. Hold on, before we call it. So yeah, just like that, we can generate a bunch of very cool snare sounds. And just if we find something that we like, we can turn off randomize and record it, or play it back and bounce a track to MIDI and then start using it like a normal snare sound. It's really just up to you what you end up doing with the plugin once you find sounds from it that you like. And I think snare drums and just drums in general are a great sort of demonstration of that. All right, and last but not least, I have ambience, and this is sort of a fun one. This is just sort of a demonstration again of what this plugin can do as far as soundscapes go. I've chosen a little bit of ambient reverb here. This is like a Academy Yard Impulse. I think this is just something that comes with the convolution reverb in Ableton. So we're going to basically take a bunch of distant artillery and armor sounds and battle sounds and whatever you can find in your library, really. And I'm going to drop them into the plugin and just let them play. These are long samples. Some of them are a minute long, but I think that's the best part. We're just going to create a soundscape out of these at random. So let's drag these all in. We've got 47 samples loaded. And you can already hear kind of how easy it is to just start randomizing atmospheres. And we can change the ambience level back here. We can add more reverb. Add low pass filters for distance sizing if we want. we keep randomly getting the 10 hut guy. But yeah, it's just very, very easy to start generating happy accidents with this thing. I think it's a lot of fun, and I'm just super excited to see what you guys make with it, and I'm happy that it's finally done. I'm going to use it all the time, and that's the plugin. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for watching the tutorial. And if you have any more questions on how to use it, just shoot me a message on Twitter, whatever you want, or on Patreon, and let me know, and I'll try and get back to you. So thanks a lot. I hope you download it. I hope you enjoy it. Bye.